The text message came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night when I was already in my nightgown, settling into bed with my evening tea and crossword puzzle. The phone buzzed against my nightstand, and I almost ignored it, thinking it was probably another spam message about my car's extended warranty. But something made me pick it up, maybe that grandmother instinct that never really goes away, even when your grandchildren are grown. The message was from Tyler, my 23-year-old grandson. "Grandma Ruth, get out of the house now. Don't ask questions. Just leave. I'll explain later. Trust me." My blood went cold. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I stared at those words on my phone screen, reading them 3 times before they actually sank in. Tyler had never sent me a message like this before. He was usually the type to send me funny memes or pictures of his college meals, asking if they looked edible. This was different. This was urgent. This was terrifying. I sat up in bed, my heart racing. At 68 years old, I'd lived through enough emergencies to know when something was genuinely wrong. The tone of Tyler's message, the way he'd used my full name instead of his usual Graham, the desperate urgency in those simple words, it all told me this wasn't a joke or a mistake. I grabbed my robe from the foot of my bed and hurried to my bedroom window. My little house on Maple Street in Cedar Falls looked exactly as it always did at midnight. The streetlight cast its usual yellow glow over my front yard. Mrs. Peterson's porch light was on across the street. Everything seemed normal. Peaceful even. So why was my grandson telling me to run? My phone buzzed again. Another message from Tyler. "Grandma, please, I'm not kidding. Get out now, go to Mrs. Chen's house next door. Call the police from there." Mrs. Chen's house. Tyler knew about Mrs. Chen, my neighbor who worked nights as a nurse and would be getting home from her shift soon. He'd thought this through. This wasn't some college prank or confusion. My grandson genuinely believed I was in danger. I slipped on my sneakers, grabbed my purse and car keys, and crept toward my bedroom door. That's when I heard it, a soft creaking sound coming from downstairs. The kind of sound the third step from the bottom makes when someone tries to walk up it quietly. The same step that had announced Tyler's midnight snack raids when he used to stay with me during summer breaks. Someone was in my house. My hands shook as I typed back to Tyler. "Someone's here. How did you know?" The response came instantly. "I've been tracking him online. He's dangerous. Get out the back door. Now." Tracking him online? My Tyler was studying computer science at the State University, always talking about cybersecurity and digital forensics in ways I never quite understood. But apparently he understood enough to know someone was coming for me before they even arrived. I tiptoed to my bedroom window and quietly unlatched it. Thank goodness I lived in a single-story ranch house. I'd always complained about the lack of stairs for exercise, but right now I was grateful I could slip out of my bedroom window without breaking my neck. The cool October air hit my face as I lowered myself into my own flower bed, crushing the mums I'd planted just last week. I could hear footsteps inside my house now, no longer trying to be quiet. Whoever was in there knew I was gone, or maybe they just didn't care about stealth anymore. I crept around the side of my house, staying low behind the hedge that separated my yard from Mrs. Chen's. My phone buzzed with another message from Tyler. "Are you out?" I called 911. "Police are coming." I was typing back when I saw a figure moving past my living room window, tall, wearing dark clothes, holding something in his hand. The streetlight caught the glint of metal. A knife? A gun? I couldn't tell, but I didn't want to find out. I made it to Mrs. Chen's back door and knocked softly. She answered almost immediately, still in her blue scrubs, coffee mug in hand. "Ruth, what on earth are you doing out here at midnight?" I pulled her inside and quickly explained what was happening. Mrs. Chen, bless her practical nurse's heart, didn't waste time with questions. She deadbolted her door, turned off her lights, and called 911 to report an intruder in progress at my address. We crouched by her front window, watching my house. The police arrived within minutes, 3 squad cars with silent flashing lights. I watched as they surrounded my little yellow house. The one I'd called home for 37 years. The one where I'd raised my daughter Sarah after my husband died. The one where Tyler had spent countless summer days learning to ride his bike in the driveway. It took the police 20 minutes to clear my house and arrest the intruder. 20 minutes during which Mrs. Chen made me tea and I tried to stop my hands from shaking long enough to call Tyler back. He answered on the first ring. "Grandma, are you okay? Are you safe?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm at Mrs. Chen's house. The police got him." My voice cracked on the last words. "Tyler, how did you know? How did you possibly know someone was coming for me?" There was a pause, and when Tyler spoke again, his voice was heavy with something I'd never heard from him before. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "Grandma, we need to talk. There's something I need to tell you about why this happened, about what I've been doing online, about why someone wanted to hurt you." My blood ran cold all over again. "What do you mean, what you've been doing online?" "I can't explain everything over the phone." "Can I come over tomorrow? I know you probably don't want to go back to your house right away, so maybe we could meet somewhere." I looked around Mrs. Chen's cozy living room, with her family photos and medical textbooks scattered on the coffee table. It felt surreal to be having this conversation while hiding from danger in my neighbor's house. "Tyler, you need to tell me right now. Why was there a man in my house with a weapon? What does this have to do with you?" Another pause. I could hear him take a shaky breath. "Grandma, I've been doing some freelance work. Computer stuff. Investigating people online, tracking down information for clients. I thought it was all legitimate, but I found out recently that one of my clients was using the information I gave him to stalk and harass people. When I tried to stop working with him and threatened to report him to the authorities, he got angry. My stomach dropped. Tyler, please tell me you didn't give this man information about me." The silence on the other end of the phone was answer enough. "Oh, Tyler," I whispered. "What have you done?" "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I never thought he would target you. I thought the worst he might do was send me angry emails or try to get me in trouble at school. I never imagined he'd actually come to your house. I'd been monitoring his online activity, and tonight I saw him posting about driving to Cedar Falls. I recognized your address in his search history." I closed my eyes, trying to process this information. My sweet grandson, who used to build blanket forts in my living room and beg me to make chocolate chip cookies, had somehow gotten mixed up with dangerous people online. And because of that, a stranger had broken into my house with a weapon. "Tyler, I need you to start from the beginning. What exactly have you been doing? Who is this man?" Mrs. Chen squeezed my shoulder and mouthed that she was going to give me some privacy. She headed to her kitchen, but I could tell she was staying close enough to help if I needed her. "His name is Marcus Webb," Tyler said. "At least, that's the name he gave me. He hired me 6 months ago to do background research on people. He said he was a private investigator working on insurance fraud cases. He paid well, and the work seemed straightforward. Find social media profiles, look up public records, basic internet detective work." I felt sick. "What kind of information were you finding?" "Home addresses, family members, employment history, daily routines."
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
Based on social media posts. At first it seemed harmless, like the kind of stuff anyone could find if they spent enough time looking. But then he started asking for more specific things. Work schedules, what cars people drove, whether they lived alone. "And you didn't think that was suspicious?" Tyler's voice got smaller. I did start to wonder. But Grandma, the money was really good. I was making more in a week than most of my classmates made in a month at their part-time jobs. And I told myself that if he was doing anything illegal with the information, that was on him, not me. I was just gathering publicly available data. I understood the temptation. Tyler had been working his way through college, taking out loans and picking up whatever work he could find. His parents, my daughter Sarah and her husband Mike, were good people, but they'd never had much money. Tyler had been on his own financially since he turned 18. "What changed?" I asked. "What made you realize something was wrong?" 3 weeks ago, I found a news article about a woman in Minnesota who was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. Her name was Jessica Chen. When I read the details of the case, I realized Marcus had hired me to research her 2 months before she died. Everything matched up: her address, her work schedule, her daily routine. I had given him everything he needed to find her. My hand flew to my mouth. Oh my God, Tyler. I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence, that maybe Marcus really was a private investigator and had been hired by the police or the family to find information. But then I started looking into the other people I'd researched for him. 5 of them had been victims of stalking or harassment in the past 6 months. 2 had restraining orders filed against unknown individuals. 1 had moved out of state after someone broke into her apartment. I felt like I was going to be sick. Tyler, you could have been an accessory to murder. I know. His voice broke. I know, and I hate myself for it. As soon as I made the connection, I stopped taking his jobs and told him I was done. I said I was too busy with school to continue working. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. He started emailing me asking me to reconsider. Then the emails got angry. He said I owed him for all the money he'd paid me, that I couldn't just walk away from our partnership. When I didn't respond, he started threatening me. I stood up and began pacing around Mrs. Chen's living room. What kind of threats? At first it was just general stuff about ruining my reputation or getting me kicked out of school. But then last week he sent me photos. Photos of what? Photos of you, Grandma. Coming out of your house, getting your mail, working in your garden. He'd been watching you. The room spun around me. I had to sit down on Mrs. Chen's couch before my legs gave out. This monster had been watching me, taking pictures of me, planning something terrible, all because my grandson had tried to do the right thing and stop helping him. Why didn't you call the police then? I asked. Why didn't you warn me sooner? I was scared, Tyler admitted. Scared they wouldn't believe me. Scared I'd get in trouble for the work I'd been doing. I thought maybe if I ignored him, he'd move on to bothering someone else. But today he sent me a message saying he was done playing games. He said if I wouldn't help him willingly, he'd find other ways to motivate me. So you've been monitoring his online activity? I set up alerts on every account I could find connected to him. Social media, forums, even his email if he was careless about security. Tonight I saw him post on a message board about driving to Cedar Falls. He included a screenshot of a Google Maps search for your address. I closed my eyes, trying to imagine what would have happened if Tyler hadn't been watching, if he hadn't warned me, if I'd been asleep when that man broke into my house. The thought made me dizzy with terror and gratitude. Grandma, are you still there? I'm here, sweetheart. I'm just trying to process all of this. I took a deep breath. Tyler, we need to go to the police together tomorrow. You need to tell them everything you just told me. All of it. I will. I promise. I should have done it weeks ago. He paused. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to get hurt because of my mistakes. Despite everything, despite the fear and shock and anger, my heart broke for him. He was 23 years old, trying to make his own way in the world, and he'd gotten in over his head with something dangerous. Tyler, you made some bad choices, but you also saved my life tonight. We'll figure out how to fix this. After I hung up with Tyler, I sat in Mrs. Chen's living room, watching the police process my house as a crime scene. Detective Rivera, a kind woman about my daughter's age, came over to get my statement and explain what they'd found. The intruder's name is Marcus Webb, just like your grandson told you. He had zip ties, duct tape, and a hunting knife when we arrested him. He also had printouts of what appeared to be surveillance photos of you and detailed information about your daily routine. My skin crawled. What was he planning to do? We're not entirely sure yet, but based on what we found and what your grandson told our officers, we believe he intended to use you as leverage to force Tyler back into working for him. He may have planned to hold you hostage until Tyler agreed to continue providing him with information about his other targets. The thought of being tied up in my own home, used as a pawn in some sick game, made me feel physically ill. How long has he been watching me? The photos we found date back about 2 weeks. We're checking traffic cameras and security footage from your neighbors to see if we can establish a pattern of surveillance. Detective Rivera sat down across from me, her expression serious but kind. Mrs. Mitchell, your grandson is lucky he realized what was happening when he did. Marcus Webb has a history of violence. We're coordinating with police departments in 3 other states on cases that may be connected to his activities. What's going to happen to Tyler? I asked. He's willing to cooperate fully, but I'm worried about him getting in legal trouble for the research work he was doing. That's going to depend on a lot of factors. The district attorney will make the final decision, but given that Tyler is cooperating, that he tried to stop working with Webb when he realized what was happening, and that his warning potentially saved your life, I suspect they'll work with him rather than against him. Relief flooded through me. What about the other victims, the people Tyler researched? We're contacting all of them to let them know about the arrest and to make sure they're safe. Some of them may need to take additional security precautions while we investigate Webb's full network of activities. I thought about those women, those families who had no idea that their personal information had been gathered and sold to someone who wanted to hurt them. Detective Rivera, is there anything I can do to help? Any way I can make this right? She looked surprised. Mrs. Mitchell, you're the victim here. You don't need to make anything right. But my grandson was involved in gathering information that put people in danger. I feel responsible. Tyler was manipulated by someone much more experienced in this type of criminal activity. Webb has been running these schemes for years, preying on young people who need money and don't fully understand what they're getting involved in. Tyler is as much a victim as anyone else. Detective Rivera left me her card and told me I could return to my house the next day after the crime scene team finished their work. Mrs. Chen insisted I stay in her guest room for the night, and I was grateful not to be alone. I called my daughter Sarah to let her know what had happened. She was horrified, terrified, and then furious with Tyler for getting involved with dangerous people online. I spent 20 minutes convincing her not to drive down from Minneapolis in the middle of the night. "Mom, I can't believe Tyler put you in danger like this," she said for the 3rd time. "Sarah, Tyler saved my life." Tonight. Yes, he made mistakes, but when he realized how serious the situation was, he did everything he could to protect me. He should have called the police weeks ago when this Webb person started threatening him. You're right, he should have. But he's young and he was scared, and he didn't fully understand what he was dealing with. We can't change what already happened. We can only move forward from here. Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Mom, what if Tyler hadn't been watching this guy's online activity? What if he hadn't warned you in time?" I'd been trying not to think about that possibility. "But he did warn me, sweetheart. He was watching, and he did call, and I'm safe. This time." But what if this Marcus Webb has friends? What if there are other people out there who want to hurt Tyler for cooperating with the police? I hadn't considered that possibility, and it made my stomach clench with fresh worry. I suppose we'll have to take things one day at a time and trust that the police know how to handle these situations. After we hung up, I lay awake in Mrs. Chen's guest room, staring at the ceiling and thinking about how quickly life can change. That morning, I'd been a regular grandmother living a quiet life in a small town. By midnight, I was a target of a dangerous criminal, hiding in my neighbor's house while police arrested an intruder who'd broken into my home with zip ties and a knife. But I was also thinking about Tyler, about the young man who'd made some bad choices but ultimately risked his own safety to save mine. About how he'd been monitoring a dangerous criminal's online activity just to make sure I was safe. About the quick thinking and love that had prompted him to send me that warning text at 11:47 p.m. The next morning, Tyler arrived at Mrs. Chen's house at 7 a.m., looking like he hadn't slept at all. His eyes were red-rimmed, and his hair was messy, and when he saw me, he started crying. "Grandma, I'm so sorry I put you in danger. I'm sorry I didn't tell you what was happening sooner. I'm sorry I ever got involved with that man in the first place." I pulled my grandson into a hug and held him while he cried. He was taller than me now, had been since he was 16, but in that moment he felt like the little boy who used to run to me for comfort when he skinned his knee. "Tyler, listen to me. You made some mistakes, yes, but you also saved my life. Do you understand that? If you hadn't been monitoring Marcus Webb's activity, if you hadn't warned me to get out of the house, I might not be here today." "But I'm the reason he came after you in the first place." "No, sweetheart. Marcus Webb is the reason he came after me. He's a dangerous man who manipulates people and hurts them. You were trying to earn money for college, and he took advantage of that. When you realized what was really going on, you tried to stop. And when he escalated to threatening violence, you did everything you could to protect me. Tyler pulled back and wiped his eyes. What happens now? Now we go to the police station, and you tell them everything you told me last night. Every detail you can remember about Marcus Webb, about the work you did for him, about the other victims. And then we figure out how to move forward. Mrs. Chen drove us to the police station, where Detective Rivera was waiting with a federal agent named Martinez. Apparently, Marcus Webb's activities crossed state lines, making this a federal case. Tyler spent 3 hours giving his statement, answering questions, and providing access to his computer files and communications with Webb. I watched him through the window of the interview room, saw how seriously he took the responsibility of helping the investigation. Agent Martinez spoke with me separately. Mrs. Mitchell, your grandson's cooperation is invaluable to this case. We believe Marcus Webb has been running a network of young freelancers, most of whom had no idea their research was being used to target victims for stalking, harassment, and worse. How many other people are involved? We're still determining that, but we've identified at least 12 other students from various colleges who did similar work for Webb. Most of them, like Tyler, thought they were doing legitimate research for a private investigator. And the victims? We've identified 17 potential victims across 4 states. Thanks to Tyler's information, we're able to warn them and provide protection where necessary. I felt sick thinking about those 17 people who'd been targeted because of information Tyler and others had provided. But I also felt grateful that the investigation could now protect them from further harm. Will Tyler face charges? Agent Martinez hesitated. The federal prosecutor will make that determination. However, Tyler's cooperation, his attempt to cease working with Webb when he realized the true nature of the activities, and his actions to protect you, will all be taken into consideration. It's my understanding that he's also agreed to help with the ongoing investigation and to testify if necessary. When Tyler came out of the interview room, he looked exhausted but relieved. They said I can go home, but I need to stay available for follow-up questions and possibly testimony. Detective Rivera walked us out. Mrs. Mitchell, we've finished processing your house. You can return home, but we recommend having your locks changed and considering a security system. The thought of going back to my house, knowing that Marcus Webb had been inside it, made me feel queasy. But it was my home, and I wasn't going to let fear drive me away from it permanently. Tyler insisted on coming home with me. I'm not leaving you alone until we know for sure that Webb didn't have any accomplices who might still be out there. We drove to my house in Tyler's old Honda Civic, the same car I'd helped him buy when he turned 17 with money from his summer job at the hardware store. It felt strange pulling into my own driveway, seeing my house surrounded by police tape like something from a TV crime show. Inside, everything looked normal, except for the black fingerprint powder on various surfaces, and the fact that my back door had a new lock installed by the police. Tyler walked through every room, checking windows and door locks, looking under furniture and in closets like he expected to find another intruder hiding somewhere. Tyler, the police already cleared the house. It's safe. I know, but I need to see for myself. He paused in my living room, looking at the family photos on my mantelpiece. Pictures of him at various ages, pictures of Sarah and Mike, pictures of my late husband Robert. Grandma, what if I'd lost you because of my stupidity? I sat down on my couch, the same couch where I'd been folding laundry when Marcus Webb first broke into my house. But you didn't lose me. I'm right here. Tyler sat down beside me. I keep thinking about all the things I should have done differently. I should have researched Marcus Webb more carefully before agreeing to work with him. I should have asked more questions about why he needed the information. I should have gone to the police the moment I realized something was wrong. Tyler, you can't change the past. You can only learn from it and make better choices going forward. How are you not furious with me? How are you being so understanding about this? I thought about that question. The truth was, I had been angry. I'd been terrified and angry and disappointed. But sitting there in my living room, looking at my grandson who'd been carrying the weight of his mistakes and his fear for weeks. I realized that anger wasn't going to help either of us. "I am angry," I said honestly. "I'm angry that you got involved with dangerous people. I'm angry that you didn't trust me enough to tell me what was happening. I'm angry that other people got hurt because of information you provided." Tyler flinched, but I continued. "But I'm also proud of you. You're 23 years old, and you figured out that something was wrong and you tried to fix it. When that didn't work, you found a way to protect me. You could have just run, Tyler. You could have transferred schools or moved away and hoped Marcus Webb would leave you alone. Instead, you stayed and monitored his activities and risked your own safety to save mine." "I couldn't let anything happen to you," Tyler said quietly. "You're the most important person in my life. You always have been." That's when I started crying. Not from fear or anger, but from love for this young man who'd made mistakes but ultimately chosen courage and loyalty over self-preservation. Tyler hugged me while I cried, and for a few minutes we just sat together in my living room, processing everything that had happened and everything that could have happened. "What now?" Tyler asked eventually. "Now we figure out how to move forward. You finish your degree, hopefully without getting involved with any more dangerous criminals. I maybe invest in a security system and definitely change all my passwords. And we both try to help the police make sure Marcus Webb can't hurt anyone else. Are you going to tell Mom about all the details?" I considered that. Sarah was already worried enough about Tyler's involvement in the situation. She didn't need to know about the zip ties and hunting knife, or about the full extent of how close I'd come to being kidnapped, or worse. "I'll tell her what she needs to know. The important thing is that you're safe, I'm safe, and Marcus Webb is in custody." Tyler nodded. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When you got my text last night telling you to get out of the house, did you hesitate at all? Did you think maybe I was wrong or overreacting?" I thought back to that moment, sitting in my bed reading those urgent words on my phone screen. For about 10 seconds, yes. It seemed so unlikely that anyone would want to break into my house. I'm just a retired librarian in a small town. I don't have enemies or valuable things worth stealing. What changed your mind? The way you wrote the message. You used my full name instead of calling me Graham. You told me not to ask questions, which isn't like you at all, and you told me to go to Mrs. Chen specifically, which meant you'd thought through where I'd be safe. All of that told me you were serious, and that you genuinely believed I was in danger." Tyler smiled for the first time since he'd arrived that morning. "You know, in all my cybersecurity classes they talk about trusting your instincts when something seems off online. I guess the same thing applies to real life." "It does. And Tyler, I want you to promise me something." "What?" "If you ever find yourself in a situation like this again, where you're not sure if something is legitimate or legal or safe, you'll talk to someone. Talk to me, talk to your parents, talk to a professor, talk to the police. Don't try to handle it alone. I promise." "And Grandma?" "Yes?" "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for believing that I'd never intentionally put you in danger, even though I made terrible choices that ended up doing exactly that." I reached over and took his hand. "Tyler, you're human. Humans make mistakes. What matters is how we handle those mistakes and what we learn from them. You've handled this situation with courage and integrity, and I couldn't be more proud of you." We spent the rest of the morning changing locks and researching security systems. Tyler installed some kind of app on my phone that would allow me to contact him instantly if I ever felt unsafe again. He also showed me how to check if someone had been in my house while I was away. Simple things like leaving a small object in a specific position or noticing if furniture had been moved slightly. Around noon, Detective Rivera called to let us know that Marcus Webb had been formally charged with breaking and entering, stalking, and attempted kidnapping. The federal charges related to his larger criminal network were still being developed. "Will he get bail?" I asked. "It's unlikely, given the nature of the charges and the fact that he was caught with weapons and restraints in your home, but we'll keep you informed of any developments." After Detective Rivera hung up, I felt like I could finally take a deep breath. Marcus Webb was in custody, Tyler was safe, and I was safe. The immediate danger was over. But as I looked around my house, seeing the fingerprint powder still smudged on my doorframe and the new locks that Tyler had insisted on installing, I realized that the effects of this experience would stay with me for a long time. I'd always been someone who felt safe in my own home, who left doors unlocked and windows open without a second thought. That innocence was gone now, replaced by a new awareness of how quickly safety could be shattered. Tyler seemed to sense what I was thinking. "Grandma, I know this has changed things for you. I know you'll never feel quite as safe as you used to." "That's not your fault, sweetheart. That's Marcus Webb's fault." "But if I hadn't gotten involved with him in the first place, Tyler," I interrupted him gently. "We could play, what if, all day long. What if you'd never taken that job? What if you'd realized sooner what Webb was really doing? What if you'd called the police earlier?" But none of those what-ifs change what actually happened. And what actually happened is that a dangerous man targeted our family, and you found a way to protect me from him. Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Do you really believe that?" "I do. And I need you to believe it too. Because carrying around guilt for something that wasn't ultimately your fault will only hurt you in the long run." That afternoon, Sarah and Mike drove down from Minneapolis. Sarah hugged me for about 5 minutes straight, crying and telling me how terrified she'd been when she got my phone call. "Mom, when you told me someone had broken into your house with a weapon, I just kept thinking about how I could have lost you. How Tyler and I both could have lost you because of something so senseless." Mike, who was usually the quiet one in the family, pulled Tyler aside for a serious conversation. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see Tyler nodding earnestly, and Mike patting his shoulder in a way that suggested forgiveness and understanding. When they came back inside, Mike announced that they were taking Tyler and me out to dinner. "We need to celebrate the fact that everyone in this family is safe and sound." We went to Rosario's, the Italian restaurant where we'd been celebrating family milestones for years. The same place where we'd taken Tyler for his high school graduation dinner, where we'd celebrated Sarah's promotion at work, where we'd toasted Tyler's acceptance to college. Over plates of pasta and garlic bread, we talked about everything except Marcus Webb and criminal networks and surveillance photos. We talked about Tyler's upcoming finals, about Sarah's new project at work, about Mike's plans to build a deck on their house next summer. Normal family conversations that felt precious after coming so close to losing the chance to have them. As we were leaving the restaurant, Tyler pulled me aside. "Grandma, there's something else I need to tell you. Something I didn't mention to the police because it didn't seem directly relevant to their investigation." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "The money I made working for Marcus Webb. It's still sitting in my bank account. I haven't spent any of it because it felt wrong to use money that was connected to hurting people. But I don't know what to do with it." I thought about that. Blood money, some people might call it. Payment for work that had ultimately put innocent people in danger. But Tyler had earned that money before he knew what Webb was really using the information for. How much money are we talking about? Almost $8,000. That was a substantial amount for a college student. Probably enough to pay for a semester's worth of expenses or to significantly reduce Tyler's student loan debt. What do you want to do with it? I was thinking maybe I could donate it to organizations that help victims of stalking or domestic violence. Turn something bad into something that might help people. I smiled at my grandson, feeling proud all over again of the man he was becoming. I think that's exactly the right thing to do. The next few weeks fell into a new routine. Tyler called me every morning before his classes and every evening after work, just to check in. I installed a security system with cameras and motion sensors, which made me feel safer but also constantly reminded me of why I needed them. Detective Rivera updated me regularly on the investigation. They'd identified 23 victims across 6 states, and Marcus Webb was facing federal charges that would likely keep him in prison for decades. Several of the college students who'd unknowingly worked for him were cooperating with the investigation and helping to identify additional victims. The hardest part was reading some of the news coverage about the case. Reporters seemed fascinated by the story of the grandmother who'd been saved by her cybersecurity student grandson's warning text. Most of the articles were respectful, but some focused on the sensational details in ways that made me uncomfortable. Tyler was struggling with the media attention too. His name had been kept out of most reports, but word had gotten around campus about his involvement in the case. Some of his classmates treated him like a hero for helping to bring down a criminal network. Others whispered that he'd been involved with dangerous people and couldn't be trusted. "It's like I'm either a hero or a villain," he told me during one of our evening phone calls. "Nobody seems to understand that I'm just a regular person who made some bad choices and then tried to fix them. People need simple stories, Tyler. Hero or villain is easier to understand than complicated young man who got in over his head but ultimately did the right thing. How do you deal with it? With people making assumptions about you?" I thought about the neighbors who'd started looking at me differently, like I was some kind of crime magnet who'd brought danger to our quiet street. About the reporters who'd called me a feisty grandmother in their articles, as if surviving a home invasion was just a cute personality quirk. "I remember that the people who matter know the truth," I said. "Mrs. Chen knows the truth. Your parents know the truth. Detective Rivera knows the truth. The opinions of people who don't know the whole story don't really matter. Do you ever regret that I warned you? Do you ever wish you'd just stayed asleep and let whatever was going to happen, happen?" The question shocked me. "Tyler, how can you even ask that?" 3 months after that terrifying night, I was finally starting to feel like myself again. The security system had become second nature, and I no longer jumped every time a floorboard creaked in my house. Tyler had finished his semester with excellent grades, despite everything he'd been through. The federal prosecutor had decided not to file charges against him, recognizing that he was a victim of Marcus Webb's manipulation rather than a willing accomplice. But peace, I was learning, is often temporary. It started with small things. A feeling that someone was watching me when I worked in my garden. Items in my house that seemed slightly out of place when I came home from errands. A car that appeared to follow me to the grocery store and the library on multiple occasions. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid, that the trauma of Webb's break-in had made me hypervigilant about potential threats. Then I found the note. It was tucked under my windshield wiper after I came out of church one Sunday morning. Plain white paper, computer-printed text. "Your grandson ruined everything. Now it's your turn to pay." My hands shook as I read those words in the church parking lot, surrounded by families heading home for Sunday dinner. I looked around, wondering if whoever had left the note was still watching me. But I saw only familiar faces from my congregation. I drove straight home and called Detective Rivera. She arrived within an hour, bringing Agent Martinez with her. They examined the note carefully, bagged it for fingerprint analysis, and asked me detailed questions about the incidents I'd been experiencing. "Mrs. Mitchell, why didn't you report these earlier concerns?" Agent Martinez asked. "Because I thought I was being paranoid. After what happened with Webb, I expected to feel jumpy for a while. I didn't want to waste your time with false alarms." Detective Rivera leaned forward in her chair. "Ruth, in cases like these, we'd rather investigate 100 false alarms than miss one real threat. Promise me you'll call immediately if anything else seems off." They increased patrols in my neighborhood and advised me to vary my daily routines, but I could tell they were worried about something they weren't sharing with me. Tyler drove down from campus that evening, arriving with a duffel bag and a determined expression. "I'm staying here until we figure out what's going on. Tyler, you have classes and exams. You can't put your life on hold every time something scares me." "Grandma, someone left a threatening note on your car. This isn't about you being scared. This is about you being in actual danger again." He set up his laptop at my kitchen table and began what he called digital reconnaissance. I watched him work, typing rapidly and switching between multiple screens full of information I couldn't begin to understand. "What exactly are you doing?" I asked. "Monitoring online forums and social media for any mention of Webb or the case. Checking if anyone's been searching for information about you or our family. Looking for patterns that might tell us who's behind the note. Is that safe? What if whoever's threatening me can track that you're looking for them? Tyler glanced up from his computer. I'm using security protocols that make it virtually impossible to trace this back to me or to this location. Don't worry, I learned my lesson about operational security. 2 days later, he found what he was looking for. Grandma, I need you to sit down for this. I poured myself a cup of coffee and joined him at the kitchen table. His laptop screen showed what appeared to be a forum discussion thread. This is a private forum for people who've been arrested or investigated for stalking and harassment. Webb was a member before his arrest, and he'd built quite a following among other criminals who used similar methods. My stomach dropped. Are you telling me there's a whole community of people like Webb? Unfortunately, yes. But here's the specific problem we're facing. Tyler scrolled down to highlight a particular post. 3 weeks ago, someone with the username Justice4Marcus posted detailed information about you, me, and the case. They're calling Webb a martyr and saying his arrest was a setup. I read the post Tyler was showing me, feeling sicker with each line. This person had somehow obtained crime scene photos, police reports, and personal information about our family. They'd posted my address, Tyler's school, even Sarah's workplace in Minneapolis. But that's not the worst part, Tyler continued. Look at the responses. I saw dozens of replies from other forum members, many expressing sympathy for Webb and anger toward Tyler and me. Some contained specific threats. Others offered to, quote, help Justice4Marcus get revenge for their fallen brother. Tyler, how is this legal? How can people post threats like this on the internet without consequences? Technically, most of them are careful to keep their language just vague enough to avoid direct threats of violence. And this forum is hosted on servers in countries that don't cooperate with U.S. law enforcement. It's like a digital safe haven for criminals. I felt overwhelmed by the scope of the problem. It wasn't just one dangerous individual anymore. It was a whole network of people who saw Tyler and me as enemies. How many people are we talking about? Tyler scrolled through the forum. Active members in this particular discussion? Maybe 50 or 60? But the post about you has been shared to other forums and social media groups. Potentially thousands of people have seen your personal information. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me think someone was prowling around my house. Every car that drove down my quiet street could be carrying someone who wanted to hurt me or my family. The security system that had made me feel safer now felt inadequate. Against the faceless mob of online strangers who decided I was their enemy. The next morning brought worse news. Detective Rivera called to tell me that Jessica Chen's family had received threatening messages referencing the forum post Tyler had discovered. 2 other families connected to Webb's victims had reported similar harassment. Ruth, we're recommending that you consider relocating temporarily while we investigate this threat network. These people aren't just angry about Webb's arrest. They're actively coordinating harassment campaigns against anyone connected to the case. Relocate where? For how long? We have safe house protocols for witnesses in federal cases. It wouldn't be permanent, but it might be necessary until we can identify and arrest the people behind these threats. I looked around my kitchen. At the coffee mug Tyler had given me for Christmas. At the African violets on my windowsill. At the grocery list stuck to my refrigerator. This was my home. I'd already been driven out of it once by Marcus Webb. I wasn't ready to let his followers chase me away too. What if I refuse? What if I want to stay here? Detective Rivera was quiet for a moment. Then we'll do everything we can to protect you. But I can't guarantee your safety. These online harassment networks are sophisticated and dangerous. They've driven people to suicide, forced families to abandon their homes, even inspired physical attacks. After she hung up, I sat at my kitchen table feeling more alone than I had since Robert died. Tyler was upstairs on a video call with Agent Martinez, discussing technical aspects of the digital threats that were beyond my understanding. Sarah was 3 hours away in Minneapolis, probably worrying herself sick about my safety, and I was trapped in the middle of a conflict I'd never asked to be part of. That afternoon, Tyler came downstairs with a proposal that surprised me. Grandma, what if we didn't run from these people? What if we fought back instead? Tyler, we're not exactly equipped to take on a network of cybercriminals. Maybe not alone, but I've been thinking about this all wrong. These people are counting on us being isolated and scared. They want us to hide so they can claim victory and move on to terrorizing the next family. Tyler pulled out his laptop and showed me what he'd been working on. What if we told our story publicly? What if we made it clear that we're not going to be intimidated, and that we're working with law enforcement to identify and prosecute anyone who threatens us? I studied his screen, which showed a rough draft of what looked like a blog post. Tyler, won't that just make us bigger targets? Maybe, but it will also show these people that we're not defenseless victims. And more importantly, it might encourage other families in similar situations to come forward. The police told us that most people who receive these kinds of threats never report them because they're too scared, or they think nothing can be done. I thought about Jessica Chen's family, dealing with threats and harassment while they were still grieving their daughter's murder. About all the other victims Webb had targeted, now facing a secondary victimization from his online supporters. What would we say? How do we tell this story without putting ourselves in more danger? Tyler's eyes lit up. We focus on the facts. We explain how online harassment networks operate, how they target families of crime victims, how they use intimidation to silence people who might testify against criminals. We make it educational rather than personal. And do you think that will help? I think it will help law enforcement build cases against these criminals. I think it will help other victims feel less alone. And I think it will show these harassers that we're not going to disappear quietly. Over the next few days, Tyler and I worked together to craft our response. We consulted with Detective Rivera and Agent Martinez, who initially worried that going public might escalate the threats, but eventually agreed that our approach could be valuable to their investigation. Tyler handled the technical aspects, creating a secure website and social media accounts that couldn't be easily hacked or traced back to our physical location. I focused on telling our story in a way that might help other families understand what they were facing and what resources were available to them. We launched our website on a Thursday morning with a simple title, Standing Up to Online Harassment Networks. The first post told our story, from Tyler's initial involvement with Marcus Webb through the current threats we were facing. We included information about how to report online harassment, how to work with law enforcement, and how to protect yourself digitally while dealing with these situations. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, we received messages from dozens of families who'd experienced similar harassment. Parents whose children had been targeted by online predators. Victims of domestic violence whose abusers had used internet stalking to continue terrorizing them. Witnesses in criminal cases who'd been driven into hiding by online mobs. But we also received an escalation in threats. Tyler's security monitoring systems lit up with alerts as members of the harassment forums discovered our website and began coordinating responses. Some tried to hack our site. Others posted increasingly graphic threats on various platforms. A few attempted to identify our physical location despite the security precautions Tyler had implemented. Are we making things worse? I asked Tyler as we watched the digital attacks unfold in real time. Short term, maybe. But look at this. Tyler showed me messages from other victims who said our website had given them hope and practical resources. We're not just helping ourselves. We're helping other people who've been suffering in silence. 3 weeks after we launched the website, Agent Martinez called with news that changed everything. Ruth, Tyler's digital forensics work led us to identify the person behind the Justice for Marcus account. His name is David Kowalski, and he's Marcus Webb's older brother. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. His brother? Apparently, Webb had been sending letters from jail encouraging David to harass the families of his victims. We found the correspondence when we searched David's apartment yesterday. You arrested him? We did, along with 3 other men who were working with him to coordinate the harassment campaign. David had been using his deceased mother's identity to rent server space and create fake accounts. His network was more sophisticated than we initially realized. Tyler grabbed the phone. Agent Martinez, does this mean the online threats will stop? We expect a significant decrease, yes. David was the primary organizer of the harassment campaign. Without his coordination, the other forum members are likely to move on to easier targets. After we hung up, Tyler and I sat in my kitchen feeling a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The immediate threat was over, but the experience had changed us both in ways we were still processing. Tyler, do you regret any of it? The website, the decision to fight back instead of hiding? He was quiet for a long moment. No. I mean, it was terrifying, and I wouldn't want to go through it again, but I'm glad we stood up for ourselves. I'm glad we helped other people. Even though it made things more dangerous for us initially. Grandma, we were already in danger. David Kowalski was going to harass us whether we stayed quiet or not. At least by speaking out, we helped law enforcement catch him faster. I realized Tyler was right. The threats had escalated when we went public, but they'd been escalating anyway. By taking action, we'd shortened the timeline and helped other families in the process. Over the following months, our website became a resource that law enforcement agencies around the country began recommending to victims of online harassment. Tyler received job offers from cybersecurity firms that had been impressed by his work on the case. Several families we'd helped sent us letters expressing gratitude for giving them the information and courage they'd needed to seek help. But the most meaningful response came from Jessica Chen's parents. They sent a handwritten letter thanking us for helping to catch their daughter's killer, and for standing up to the people who'd been tormenting their family in the aftermath of her death. They included a photo of Jessica from her college graduation, smiling and full of life. She would have wanted her death to mean something, her mother wrote. Thank you for making sure it did. That letter made all the fear and stress and sleepless nights feel worthwhile. 6 months later, Marcus Webb was convicted on federal charges and sentenced to life in prison without parole. His brother David received 15 years for coordinating the harassment network. The other men involved in the campaign received shorter sentences, but were also required to pay restitution to their victims. Tyler graduated from college with honors and a job offer from the FBI's cybercrime division. He'd found his calling in helping to protect people from digital predators and harassers. I returned to my normal routines, though I kept the security system and maintained the digital safety practices Tyler had taught me. The African violets on my windowsill bloomed better than ever, as if they'd absorbed strength from surviving the storm that had swept through our lives. The website Tyler and I created continued to help families deal with online harassment, eventually growing into a nonprofit organization with professional staff and federal funding. We'd turned our worst experience into something that protected other people from similar trauma. But perhaps the most important change was in my relationship with Tyler. The crisis had transformed us from grandmother and grandson into partners in something larger than ourselves. We'd faced danger together, made difficult decisions together, and ultimately triumphed together. On the first anniversary of the night Tyler's warning text saved my life, he came over for dinner. We made spaghetti and meatballs, his favorite meal since childhood, and talked about how much our lives had changed. Grandma, do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd never gotten involved with Marcus Webb in the first place? I considered the question while twirling pasta around my fork. Sometimes, but then I think about all the good that came from it. The other families we've helped, the criminals who were caught, your new career fighting cybercrime. Maybe some things happen for reasons we can't see at the time. You really believe that? I believe that we can choose to find meaning in our suffering, even when we wouldn't have chosen the suffering itself. Tyler nodded slowly. I used to feel guilty about putting you in danger. But now I think maybe the danger was already out there, waiting for someone. At least we were able to do something about it. More than something, Tyler. We've probably prevented other families from going through what we went through. That's not nothing. That's everything. As we cleaned up the dishes, Tyler's phone buzzed with a message. He checked it and smiled. What is it? Another family found our website. They're dealing with harassment from their daughter's stalker's friends. They want to know if we can help them understand how to work with the FBI. What did you tell them? Tyler was already typing his response. I told them we'd set up a call tomorrow to walk them through everything we learned. I watched my grandson, now 24 years old, and confident in ways that had been forged by fire, reach out to help strangers who were facing the same nightmare we'd survived. He'd made mistakes, learned from them, and turned that knowledge into a way to protect other people. The scared young man who'd sent me that desperate warning text at 11:47 p.m. had grown into someone who could face down dangerous criminals and emerge stronger. He'd kept his promise to never handle dangerous situations alone, consulting with law enforcement and family at every step. But he'd also found the courage to take risks when they were necessary to help others. After Tyler left that evening, I sat on my front porch watching the sunset paint my quiet neighborhood in shades of gold and pink. Mrs. Chen waved from her garden, where she was planting new flowers. The Peterson family's children rode their bikes up and down the street, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. This was still my home, still my sanctuary, but it was also something more now. It was the place where I'd learned that safety isn't something that's given to you. It's something you create through courage, community, and the willingness to stand up for what's right, even when it's dangerous. My phone buzzed with a text message. For just a moment, my heart skipped with the old fear, remembering that night when Tyler's urgent warning had saved my life. But this message was from Sarah, sending a photo of my newest great-grandchild, born just last week. "Thought you'd like to see little Emma's first smile," the message read. I smiled back at the photo, thinking about the future this baby would grow up in. A future where families like ours had helped make the internet a little safer. Where victims of harassment had more resources and support. Where dangerous people faced real consequences for their actions. Emma would grow up in a world that was still dangerous in many ways, but also a world where ordinary people could make extraordinary differences when they chose courage over comfort. I sent Sarah a heart emoji and went inside to make my evening tea, grateful for Tyler's warning that night, grateful for the strength we'd found together, and grateful for the chance to turn our nightmare into someone else's hope. The house settled around me with its familiar sounds, and I felt truly safe for the first time since this whole ordeal began. Not because the danger was gone forever, but because I knew that if it ever returned, Tyler and I would face it together, and we would not be defeated. Outside, the security system's motion sensor light flickered on as a raccoon wandered across my backyard, probably heading for Mrs. Chen's garbage cans. I smiled, remembering how every small sound used to terrify me after Webb's break-in. Now I knew the difference between a raccoon and a real threat. More importantly, I knew that I had the tools, the support system, and the courage to handle whatever challenges might come my way. My phone rang one more time that evening. Tyler, calling to say goodnight and make sure I was okay, just as he'd done every night for the past year. "I'm perfect, sweetheart," I told him. "Sleep well." "Love you, Grandma." "Love you too, Tyler." Sweet dreams. I hung up and turned off the lights, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to help people who were facing the kind of crisis we'd survived. And knowing that whatever came next, we'd face it together, stronger than we'd ever been before. The text that had started this whole journey, "Grandma, get out now," had saved my life that night. But the real salvation had come from what we'd built together in the months that followed. A partnership. A purpose. A way to transform fear into strength and victims into advocates. Sometimes the worst night of your life becomes the foundation for the best work you'll ever do. Sometimes a grandson's warning text is just the beginning of a much larger story about family, courage, and the power of standing up for what's right. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, your worst crisis becomes your greatest opportunity to make a difference in the world. 2 years had passed since that terrifying night, and I was preparing for what would become one of the most meaningful days of my life. Tyler was graduating from the FBI Academy at Quantico, and our entire family was driving down to Virginia to watch him take his oath as a federal agent, specializing in cybercrime investigations. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting the navy blue dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion. It was the same color as the dress Maya had wanted to buy for Jennifer's wedding in that other family's story, but this was different. This was about celebrating someone who had chosen to dedicate his life to protecting others from the kind of criminals who had once threatened our family. Sarah knocked on my bedroom door. "Mom, are you ready? Mike's loading the car, and we want to get on the road early to avoid traffic." "Almost," I called back, taking one last look at myself. The woman in the mirror looked older than she had 2 years ago, with more silver in her hair and new lines around her eyes. but she also looked stronger, more purposeful. The fear that had once clouded her expression had been replaced by something resembling peace. The drive to Quantico took 4 hours, during which Sarah peppered me with questions about the speech Tyler had asked me to give at the graduation reception. The FBI Academy had invited family members of graduates to share stories about their loved ones, journeys to federal law enforcement, and Tyler had specifically requested that I be the one to speak about his path. "What are you planning to say?" Sarah asked from the passenger seat while Mike navigated the interstate traffic. "The truth," I replied, "about how sometimes our biggest mistakes lead us to our most important work." When we arrived at the FBI Academy, I was struck by the formality and dignity of the place. This was where America's federal agents learned to protect citizens from the most dangerous criminals in the country. And somewhere in those buildings, my grandson had spent the past several months transforming himself from a college student who'd made poor choices into someone trusted with the safety of others. Tyler found us in the visitor parking lot, and I barely recognized him. Gone was the shaggy-haired young man who used to slouch at my kitchen table doing homework. In his place stood a confident federal agent in a crisp dress uniform, his posture straight and his handshake firm when he greeted the other families gathering for the ceremony. But when he saw me, his professional demeanor cracked just slightly. "Grandma, you came?" "Wild horses couldn't have kept me away, sweetheart." The graduation ceremony was held in a large auditorium filled with hundreds of family members and FBI officials. I watched with tears in my eyes as Tyler and his classmates took their oaths, promising to defend the Constitution and protect American citizens from all threats, foreign and domestic. During the reception afterward, I was introduced to Tyler's instructors and fellow graduates. Several of them told me that Tyler had become known at the Academy for his expertise in tracking online criminal networks and his passion for helping victims of cybercrime. "Your grandson has a gift for this work," one instructor told me. "He understands both the technical aspects of cybercrime and the human cost of these crimes in ways that many agents never develop." "He learned about the human cost the hard way," I replied. When it came time for family members to share their stories, I walked to the podium, feeling nervous but determined. Looking out at the audience of new FBI agents and their families, I began to speak. 2.5 years ago, my grandson Tyler made some choices that put our family in danger. He was young, he needed money for college, and he got involved with people he didn't fully understand. Those choices led to one of the most terrifying experiences of my life, when a dangerous criminal broke into my home intending to use me as leverage to force Tyler back into working for him. I paused, seeing Tyler in the audience, his face serious but encouraging. But that same night, Tyler's quick thinking and his willingness to monitor a dangerous situation saved my life. His warning text got me out of my house minutes before an armed intruder arrived. And in the months that followed, Tyler's technical skills helped law enforcement identify and arrest an entire network of criminals who were terrorizing families across multiple states. I looked directly at Tyler as I continued. The young man who once made mistakes because he didn't fully understand the consequences of his actions became the federal agent, who now dedicates his life to protecting other families from similar threats. He learned from his errors, took responsibility for them, and transformed that knowledge into a calling to serve others. The audience was completely quiet, hanging on every word. Tyler could have run from his mistakes. He could have changed schools, moved away, and hoped the dangerous people he'd encountered would leave him alone. Instead, he chose to face the situation head-on, work with law enforcement, and use his experience to help other victims. That's the kind of courage and integrity that makes someone worthy of wearing an FBI badge. I smiled at my grandson. "Tyler, I've never been more proud of who you've become. You've shown that redemption is possible, that mistakes don't define us, and that sometimes our worst experiences can become the foundation for our most important work." The applause was thunderous. Several people in the audience were crying, including Sarah and Mike. But I was looking at Tyler, who was wiping tears from his eyes and nodding his thanks. After the reception, Tyler's new supervisor pulled me aside. "Mrs. Mitchell, I wanted you to know that Tyler's first assignment will be leading a task force focused on protecting families of crime victims from online harassment. It's a new initiative, inspired partly by the work you and Tyler did with your website and advocacy. I felt a surge of pride and gratitude. He'll be excellent at that work. I believe he will. He has a unique combination of technical skills and personal understanding of what these families go through. That's rare in this field. As we drove home that evening, Tyler called to thank me for the speech and to share some news he'd been waiting to tell the family in person. "I've been assigned to a field office in Minneapolis," he said. "I'll be close enough to visit Grandma regularly, but far enough away to have my own life and career." Sarah was thrilled that Tyler would be living in the same city. I was thrilled that he'd be close enough for our weekly dinners to continue. "Tyler, are you nervous about starting your FBI career?" I asked. "A little, but mostly I'm excited. I feel like everything I've been through, all the mistakes and the fear and the learning, it's all led to this moment. I finally know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And what's that? Protecting families like ours. Making sure that other grandmothers don't have to run from their houses in the middle of the night because their grandchildren got mixed up with dangerous people online." 3 months later, I received a call from Tyler about his first major case. A network of cybercriminals had been targeting military families, using stolen personal information to harass and threaten spouses while their partners were deployed overseas. "We arrested 12 people in 6 states, Tyler told me, his voice filled with satisfaction. The lead investigator was using the same methods Marcus Webb used, recruiting college students to gather information without telling them what it would be used for. How many families were being targeted? 43 that we know of. But Grandma, here's the amazing part. 3 of those families found our website and used the resources we created to document the harassment and work with local law enforcement. Our work from 2 years ago directly contributed to solving this case." I sat down at my kitchen table, the same spot where Tyler and I had worked together to create that website, while we were still dealing with our own crisis. "Tyler, do you realize what that means? We helped protect 43 military families we've never even met. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. How one person's bad choices can ripple out and hurt so many people, but how good choices can ripple out too, in ways we might never even know about." That conversation reminded me of something Detective Rivera had said during our original case. Sometimes standing up for what's right doesn't just protect you, it protects everyone who comes after you. Over the following year, Tyler's task force dismantled 6 major online harassment networks and helped prosecute dozens of cybercriminals. The website we'd created continued to serve as a resource for victims, and several other FBI field offices began using our model to help families in their jurisdictions. But perhaps the most meaningful development was personal. Tyler met someone, a prosecutor named Elena, who specialized in cybercrime cases. When he brought her to Sunday dinner for the first time, I could see immediately that she understood not just Tyler's work, but the journey that had led him to it. "Mrs. Mitchell," Elena said as we cleaned up after dinner, "Tyler told me about everything you went through together. I want you to know that the work you two did has influenced how our entire prosecutor's office handles these cases now." "How so?" "We take online harassment much more seriously than we used to. We understand that it's not just people being mean on the internet. It's often the precursor to real-world violence, and it can escalate quickly if it's not addressed." Tyler's case studies have become required reading for new prosecutors in our unit. I smiled, thinking about how far we'd all come. Tyler learned that lesson the hard way. The best agents usually do. The ones who've never faced real consequences for their mistakes, who've never had to rebuild trust after breaking it, they sometimes lack the empathy needed to really help victims. A year later, Tyler and Elena were engaged. Their wedding was small but perfect, held in the garden behind my house, where Tyler and I had planted vegetables together during those difficult months after Webb's arrest. The same garden where I'd sat planning our response to the online harassment campaign. As I watched Tyler dance with Elena at their reception, surrounded by FBI colleagues, prosecutors, and the neighbors who'd supported our family through our crisis, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. 3 years earlier, Tyler had been a scared college student who'd made poor choices and put our family in danger. Now he was a respected federal agent, married to a wonderful woman, using his experience to protect other families from the kind of criminals who had once threatened us. I thought about Marcus Webb, still serving his life sentence in federal prison, and his brother David, who had several more years left on his own sentence. Their choices had set in motion a chain of events that could have destroyed our family. Instead, those same events had ultimately led to Tyler finding his calling and to our family becoming stronger than we'd ever been before. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing you ever do with your life. Sometimes a grandson's desperate warning text at midnight becomes the first step toward a career dedicated to protecting others. And sometimes the grandmother who receives that text discovers reserves of courage and purpose she never knew she possessed. As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, Tyler and Elena helped me clean up the garden. We worked quietly together, picking up decorations and folding chairs, surrounded by the vegetables and flowers that had grown from seeds planted during our darkest time. "Grandma," Tyler said as we finished, "thank you for believing in me when I didn't deserve it. Thank you for standing with me when it would have been easier to walk away. Thank you for showing me that redemption is possible." I hugged my grandson and his new wife, feeling grateful for every difficult moment that had led us to this joy. "Tyler, you saved my life that night with your warning. But you've been saving other people's lives ever since. That's not redemption, sweetheart. That's heroism." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.